Yay! Welcome back to another episode of the Radical Healing Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Betancourt, and my guest today is Kara Goodwin. And Kara is the host of the Soul Elevation Podcast, where she explores ascension, spiritual awakening, energy healing, extraterrestrial connections, and consciousness. As a skilled energy healer and meditation guide, Kara empowers others to deepen their spiritual connection through transformative practices. Her debut book, which I'm reading, and it's great, you should get it, Your Authentic Awakening, A Guide to Everyday Spiritual Living, provides a roadmap to embracing a spiritually awakened and authentic life. Through her work, Kara inspires others to elevate their souls and align with their highest potential. Hi, Kara. Thanks for being
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay, here in the Zoom room.
Yes, and thank you for your flexibility. We had a little snafu this morning where I was like, wait a minute, this is an hour earlier than I meant to be. So
She's like, I
thank you
didn't
so
even
much.
log on. What are we doing here? We're here. And we have Kara, as you can tell from her bio, offers a wealth of spiritual knowledge and insight. And so I was having a bit of difficulty kind of pinpointing the conversation for you, dear listener, and how to create a focal point that would be beneficial for you. But we kind of landed on creating a relationship with spirituality that can be a substitute for, addressing this audience in particular, a substitute for the urge or the desire, the drive to feel altered. And most people do that with drugs or alcohol or sex or smoking, what have you, name your vice. But what we would like to do today is offer a conversation where you can find some piece of it that you could try on to start with today to give yourself a buzz or an altered feeling or a state of shift that can ideally help you reduce over the long term, right? Because these things take practice. There are no quick fixes, and that's why alcohol and pills don't work for the long term, because those are potential quick fixes. How to establish a practice for yourself, just like step by step, one piece at a time, as you are right now, without having to get to some other place where you can begin. So Kara has so graciously said, yes, let's talk about that. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Karen. How would you respond to that, just as an opener for this conversation?
It opens up so many things in my, where you could take that so many different ways. One thing that really feels important to me to address is that high, that sort of like, I want a buzz. I want, and the antidote to that might be patience. Coming into a more patient, like needing to address that quick hit, that quick fix.
Mm,
And that's something that I want to be realistic with in
mm,
terms of those who really feel this stirring. And if you're listening to this podcast, you are feeling a stirring, because you wouldn't be attracted to Jess's podcast if you didn't have something awakening within you that was deeper than the surface level life, the quick hit, the, whatever it might be. There is that kernel. I mean, just by way of you being interested in content like this. But when we want to connect with our soul, with our spirit, and really start to go deeply and get that true nourishment from an energetic perspective, from a purpose perspective, from a life perspective. So we're talking like grand scale. Why did I come here? Why am I in this human body? Why am I moving through this life with the people that I'm moving through it with? Those are big questions. And we want to consciously choose to be patient with it. And that's been a part of my journey too. But when one of the things with realizing with addiction, it is that like, desire to shift very quickly.
yeah.
And it's not that it's impossible with a spiritual, from a spiritual lens. There are people who have things called Kundalini awakenings. Sometimes that happens spontaneously, it happens very quickly. And it's like life is one way in one moment, and bam, suddenly they're in this altered state of consciousness and they're just one with all that is, and they don't, and it's disorienting. It's not necessarily always pleasant. There are often like pleasant things about it, but there can be a crash that comes with it of like, wait a minute, like I don't know what life is now. I don't I and I It might be a temporary thing, and you come back and you're like, wait a minute, I'm mourning the loss of what that was. I'm chasing that now. Um, but when we're connecting with spirit, there is a it is this authenticity. It is this like, oh, this is who I truly, truly am. And it could happen quickly, but it might be one of those things that we have to put one foot in front of the other and keep making the choice to say, I want to take this deeper. I want my life to not be on the surface anymore. I want to be authentic. I want to experience myself in a true way of who I really, really am eternally, beyond the physical body, beyond my personality. And that is completely possible. It is absolutely possible, but it's a choice that we keep making most of the time. Again, you could have these radical experiences that are spontaneous, but that's not always how it goes, and sometimes that can be like a really harsh way to do it. It can be too much, too fast.
Mhm.
Um, but things like meditation and things like breath work can be these ways that we get the physiology of the body such that it starts to create a chemical response within the body, particularly breath work, pranayama exercises. I just hosted a guy who maybe have you heard of Leo Mars?
Yes.
Have
Yeah,
you interviewed him?
he just emailed me.
Oh, okay, because he's got this Ether app, and I just
Breathwork in
hosted
Venice.
him. What's that?
He has a breathwork studio in Venice.
He did,
Okay.
but he's got this app now, Ether, and I've been meaning to
Oh.
check it out, but we were talking about these altered states of consciousness through breath work. And, so you can download apps that will guide you through breath work that
Mm.
do create this physiological response within the body that does feel like a high. But a lot of the work really, um, I think, some of the foundational things when we're dealing with addiction is to be truthful with ourselves about what is it actually that we are seeking with whatever it is that we're addicted to. And yeah, there is that high or that change. There's like an endorphin, or a chemical response within the body, but really, to me, it's a sense of a malaise with life. It's a sense there's something deeper that's saying, I'm not aligned. I don't feel fulfilled. And there's something else that's outside of me that's going to give me this sense of fulfillment. So whether it's I'm going to ingest something and it's going to do something chemically to me that makes me feel different, that shifts something within me, but it's just kind of stirring. It's like if you took, lake water and you put it in a mason jar and it's all kind of stirred up, and then you let it settle, and it eventually all of that
Mm.
muck and all of the little particles start to settle, and it eventually becomes clear, and then you've got at the bottom of the glass the what had been dirtying the water. And it's kind of like, you use substances and you kind of stir up that glass again to be like, okay, well, this is different.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I feel different, and maybe there's some sense of it feels good, but it isn't it you're just cycling through. You're just
Mhm.
kind of kicking up this mud. It's not actually fulfilling, it's not nourishing, it's not actually what we're desiring. It's just kind of mimicking, or it's doing something different to distract us from this disconnection that we feel. And in my opinion, the the biggest wound that we have as humans is that disconnection from spirit. It's especially in the West. We live in this culture, this society that completely disregards the role of spirit.
Mhm.
And it's such a critical component to who we are. So we're all walking around with this unacknowledged part of us that is a huge part of who we really are. And so it's hidden from people and it's not acknowledged and it's not nourished. So it withers. And then we end up with this sense of, why do I feel so empty? And what can I do about it? Can
Yeah.
I, let me take something, or let me, have sex with other people. Or with a lot of people, let me go shopping. And, it feels different. Something within you gets stirred up, but you're still missing that critical component. And because our society has been structured in such a way that it just disregards that, and in fact, it in a lot of ways it says that's not even a real thing, so don't even look there.
Yeah.
um, then we never discover what it really is. And we just keep searching, we keep having these fruitless searches. And so I think we have to be real with ourselves about what is actually driving the sense of, where is the hole that I'm trying to fill? What truly is it? What is it really? And is it that there is this incompleteness that I feel that it's never going to be filled by somebody else. It's never going to be filled by me attracting another sexual partner and having that conquest, or getting their attention. It's that is fleeting. It won't last. And having the buzz goes away, and then it's got all these side effects to it. And it's, and it creates this craving within us as well, that is, a hunger that, again, we're chasing a dream
Mhm.
through it. So it's really through that authentic connection that, bringing more of our soul, awakening that within us. It's there even if we're not nurturing it, but it could be withered. It could be a very, very small part of who we are. But as the first step is even acknowledging that it's part of us, and then saying, okay, I want to awaken this part of me. I want to nourish this part of me. I want it to grow. I want to see what that feels like, to let that be the driver. Truly, that's where that sense of fulfillment comes from, because we then have this missing part to ourselves. It's never going to be from something outside of us that we feel complete. The true, authentic wholeness of us comes from us. And so, when you mentioned that we were kind of brainstorming, where do we want to take the conversation? And so there are these parts of us that, we talked about shadow work, and how for both of us that hasn't been something that we've been drawn to, but it's sort of just showing up on its own.
Mhm.
And then, speaking for myself, that's kind of how that's been, where it's like, okay, here are these parts of myself. I've never been drawn to what is called shadow work in the spiritual community. That's never really been an interest to me, but very organically, as I've gone through my own spiritual awakening and my own spiritual evolution, bringing more and more of the true eternal nature of who I am into my being, it's awakened these sleeping parts of me, these shadow parts of me, these dormant parts of me that were painful things that I've been through, or parts of myself that, am embarrassed about, or I feel ashamed of, or all of these bits of me that aren't like the parts that make me feel good. They're the parts that when they rise up, I'm like, oh, don't look at that. You're not going to feel good if you think about that. Or, you're going to, like, you want to feel good, right?
Yeah,
And it's this,
avoid.
right. And it's like, that's not going to make you feel good. So don't go there.
Mhm.
But there's this awakening understanding within me of like, oh, that's a part of me too. And I don't want to deny the parts of me that I've been denying. I want all of me. I want this wholeness. And so And that's hard, and there can be pain that goes with it, so you kind of do it as you're ready. And that's been my approach, is like, oh, this is showing up for me now. I forgot about this, or I haven't wanted to think about this, and now I'm dreaming about it, or somebody's reminding me of it. And when my inclination is like, don't look at that, then I notice it and I catch it, and I'm like, wait a minute, why don't I want to look at that? What is here for me to bring into myself back into wholeness? And so
Mhm.
what does that have to do with what we were talking about initially? But it's this, we want to bring in the totality of who we are. Excuse me. And that includes all the parts of us. And when we're using substances, or when we're using something external to us, we're not able to really tap into the wholeness of who we are.
Mhm, mhm. Definitely. You mentioned so many great points as I've jotted my scribbly notes, but I feel in my experience, in my own experience and in working with clients, it is those repressed parts of ourselves, the shadow aspect that has the attachment to the external thing to feel good. And so in looking at it and being able to be like, I see you, first of all. I know that I hear this noise, or I like I acknowledge this presence. What in your opinion or in your experience are like the next steps that people can do to like integrate these parts of themselves that are the hurting parts, the wounded parts, the parts that seek out vice or external substance or vice or validation?
Well, one thing is the beautiful point that you made, that we don't have to do this alone. And it can be really important to have support. And so whether that is somebody who can help from a spiritual perspective, whether that's a more traditional therapist, whether that is just a trusted confidant, we don't, some people have such trauma
Mhm,
and their shadows are so looming that it can
mhm,
be really, really frightening
mhm,
to deal with those on our own. So, that might be the first step for somebody, because there can be repressed memories. I've had repressed memories show up, and they're not like overly traumatic. They're kind of your everybody has these sort of abandonment wounds, or isolation, like separation, or feeling ganged up on, that all of those kinds of almost rites of passage from a youth perspective. But that doesn't mean that we're not scarred by them. But then there are people who have much more heinous things that they have to deal with. So that may be an appropriate first step, is just saying like, okay, let's pause. Let me get somebody who can help me navigate this.
mhm,
Um, but for me, meditation has been huge. And just that ability, it doesn't have to be complicated. I know when I began my meditation journey, I didn't feel like I was really getting anywhere with it. For the first many times I tried, I kind of had these expectations that, okay, this is natural. All I have to do is make space for it and it'll happen. And then my mind was just wandering. I didn't really know what to do with myself. I've created like a 21-day online program to help people just kind of really bite-sized things as you go through, that you can develop your own practice that can be just to help you if you're like, okay, I'm interested in meditation, but I don't know where to start. But it doesn't have to be complicated, but giving yourself that space to just be, and to allow what wants to float up, and to be in that safe space. Acceptance is a big part of it. So it's whatever comes in, releasing those immediate emotions, aspects of ourselves that come in, that, like I mentioned before, the shame or the guilt or the regret. When we have these memories, first of all, everybody has memories that they feel ashamed of, or they regret, or they feel, that they are embarrassed by, whatever it might be. I mean, those are kind of, are afraid of. Those are the root of why we don't want to think about these things. But by virtue of being human, we have all experienced things like that. So it's allowing ourselves to be in a state of acceptance and almost having this parenting relationship with these parts of us, a loving and compassionate and understanding parent who wants the best and understands where we were in that part of our life and how our life may have been configured to set up that response or whatever it was that happened. So to be able to just accept and to be in it, but just without allowing those lower energies of shame, guilt, fear, because we recognize that where we are in the present moment is safe. We are not in that time, but we're just holding space for that time. And then for me, something that's been really helpful has been recognizing how I have been informed by these shadows, how they have actually tried to protect me.
Mhm.
So I, maybe I went through something and, I was victimized, for lack of a better word, that, I have this sort of victim part of me where something happened to me that I feel wasn't fair. And so it's how has that informed me? How has that actually worked in my favor, even if I haven't been thinking about it consciously? So, one thing that comes to mind is feeling left out or feeling like you've been targeted or feeling like you don't belong. A lot of us, again, like especially teenage years, preteen years, elementary school years, that is part of it for a lot of people. But it's then recognizing how we may have included people because we see subconsciously, we see like, oh, that person feels isolated or that person feels ganged up on or whatever, and reaching out to them to say like, oh, come and sit by me, or however it might have manifested. But there are likely ways that because we can feel, it's increased our empathy and it's actually helped us to progress in our own personal evolution in a certain way. We've been cheated on in a relationship and it's made us like hell-bent on not making somebody else feel that way. I know, like, one of my parents, for example, had alcoholism as a child in her family and
Mhm.
had a lot of pain around that. And she was so um, adamant, whether it was subconscious or conscious or whatever, but as she became a parent, she was always very protective of her kids. And that was always first and foremost for her. That was her number one priority because the environment she grew up in, she didn't feel that she was a priority.
Mhm.
So, it's like, how do these wounds then, how have they crafted us to be the person that we are today in a better way? Um, so releasing and also just releasing the attachment, but we can't, when we're denying it, when we're denying those shadow parts of us, or when we're denying these parts of us that are um, painful, we're like trapping it. It's
Mhm.
energy. It's energy. It's part of us that we are denying. And so we're not getting that vital life force. We're not getting the fullness of the life force of the prana, the chi, this very real energy that flows through us. When we have these parts of us that we're not claiming,
Mhm.
they're frozen and it
Mhm.
creates these energetic blockages and densities, and then the energy can't flow through properly. So
Mhm.
it literally manifests behavior patterns that are detrimental to us. It
Mhm.
creates health problems, creates relationship problems because this energy is not working in the fullness of how it's designed to do that. So it's really important. And if we're dealing with addiction, some of the root of why we're doing that is caught up in those shadow parts of us that that's often subconsciously, it's not like we're consciously, or maybe we are, maybe we know what we're doing, but more often than not, it's the subconscious part that's like, I don't want to feel who I am because I don't know how to cope with who I've been.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's this ability to embrace the beauty of the wholeness of the whole messy life experience that we are. We're not here to be perfect. We're
No.
really not here to be
Don't even.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We learn so much and we create who we are through those challenges and through the obstacles and through the heartbreak and the traumas. That really is a part of why we came. I know it sounds kind of weird, like, well, why would I come to experience this? But from a soul perspective, those are opportunities for us to grow and expand. And it's never too late for us to grow and expand from things that we've been through, even if it's been decades since
Mm-hmm.
they've happened.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity can be now to say, okay, I forgive. I have compassion for myself or for whoever other parties involved with that, and I'm going to use that to grow spiritually and to become a higher version of myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like what I'm hearing you say is like the soul wants the full expression. It's not the lightness and the goodness, it's the duality and the textures and like what can only really be experienced in a human body is what the soul is here to do
Yes.
in that full immersion. And that I don't know where I read this, but that it chooses sometimes adverse situations so that to live through so that it can ex- express and expand or live into an expansion that's not if there's no contrast, right? It's also just not that interesting. Like nobody watches a show where
Yes.
everything's great all the time and everyone's happy. That's like the most boring life ever.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right. That's the
all
playing
the
field.
dynamics.
Exactly.
Something I was hearing you saying resonates with the some of the work that I do, which is like noticing what is the positive intention of these parts of ourselves, like the person who was left out or felt singled out, where then might like intentionally withhold themselves, and but then they feel later in life that like this problem when they were a child that they weren't able to outgrow, it's preventing them from getting the work that they want or being in the relationship they want to have. And it's like that suppression of like not moving through the discomfort of allowing this stuff to float up as like I like how you said that because that is kind of how it works. I've noticed too. It's like when you don't stir the pot and you allow these things to come up and they can be acknowledged in a gentle, compassionate way, ideally if necessary with the help or support of a guide or a professional, you can see it differently. You can kind of like give yourself space from it as like not identifying with it so strongly,
The
but
witness.
yeah, to
Yeah.
witness because we are really when you talk in your book about shifting your consciousness, which I'm so deeply interested in as well. But when you can do that, when you can move back from like this small perspective of me and I and my worries and my troubles and kind of move back some layers from just being in that ego self. Well, you talk about this because you outlined it really well. In the first part of your book, you talk about the like the fractal nature of the human self being inside of the soul self, being a part of the higher self, and being a part of source.
Yes. Yeah. So that in the beginning, just to set the foundation, I just put this kind of soul design, how I see it, and different lineages see it differently, but this is how it resonates with me. So it's like we have source, which could be called God, but it's the all that is. It's the intelligence behind everything that's running through everything. It's behind everything. It's within everything. And then God, source, um, fractalizes itself, kind of separates itself to have different experiences. It wants to experience itself. And because without contrast, then there's no experience. It is just that it is, which is beautiful too. But
Mhm.
source wanted to experience itself, let's say. So it it fractalized. So it's still source, but it's this fractalization of it. And so we can think of that just in very simple terms as it fractalized into all these higher selves from our perspective, higher selves. And then then there's a higher self, which is an aspect of source. It contains source, but it is its own expression of source. And then the higher self fractalizes and it creates all of these souls. And so we are an expression of a fractalization of the higher self, which means that there are other, and the soul, like the soul is embodied in a human body, but there are all of these other souls that are expressions of one higher self, which is an expression of one source, one God. Um, and so there are all these other kind of souls that then are expressions of a higher self. And they can be, so that can be like past lives of ours, future lives of ours. So we're like this one human expression of the higher self, but there could be past lives, future lives, off-planet lives, um, in between lives, like all these different expressions, and they're all part of the one. And so I equate it
A
to,
question about this real quick.
yes, yeah.
Does the same soul like exist in multiple places or beings or bodies at the same time? Or does the soul go back, like, and you think of like the traditional sense of dying, I guess, and the body, the physical self dies, and then the soul goes back into the higher self and then gets reincarnated back? Is it like the same soul that comes in and out, or does it exist in multiple places at once? Does that
That's
make
such a good question. And it's hard for me to say. I have the same question where
sense?
I'm like, is the soul then like reincarnating one soul who's having these different expressions in different times in different places, or is it like one soul for one human? And different lineages say different things about that. Um, and so I can't say definitively, honestly, but I do like the analogy of the ocean. I think that keeps it simple too, where it's like source is the ocean. It's the whole ocean. And then you can take a cup and scoop a cup of water. And then that is like the higher self. So it contains the whole, everything that the ocean is contained in this cup, but the cup is not the whole ocean. There's more of the whole ocean. And then you take a drop from the cup, and that drop is the soul. And so the soul has the whole ocean in it. It's got the whole cup in it, but the cup is more than the drop, and the ocean is more than the drop. And so, but they're all intertwined. It's just that you kind of keep paring it down more and more. Um, so that I think is just kind of a simplified way. For me, actually, when I experience things from an energetic perspective, from a spiritual perspective, I actually see it geometrically, as these geometries of energy. So if you're watching the video, um, because you do publish the videos, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have, a geometric pattern behind me in my background, and that is a sacred geometric. So there's a sacred geometry probably people have heard of, but um, so I kind of, and sacred geometry is frequency, it's energy. Even though we see it, it's still this energy. And when I see it in my mind's eye, it's this moving, dynamic, like kind of ever changing. It's never just static like what we see behind me. Um, and it has its own frequency. And that's part of it too, where it's like, I think the higher self has multiple frequencies, and then these individual expressions are like individual aspects of it. So like in the geometry that we see behind me, you could pull out different shapes from within that. Like you could just have the Merkaba or the star tetrahedron, like that's just one part of it. You could have some of the more, there's a seed of life, flower of life back there. So you could pull just that part out. There are more intricate things within the circle. There are a lot of different expressions that are all combined to make that one geometry. So we could think of like that one geometry being like the higher self, but it's got all of these individual aspects to it that come together to make it who it is. And those are different expressions at different frequencies, um, but that all are also one. I
That's
don't
a
know.
good analogy, but it also it makes me want to ask more questions that I think would
Yeah.
segue a different way, like the twin flames conversation and all of that. But I what I would love to ask you is that can you incite these experiences for yourself? And if so, how have you done that? Like what has been the path to get to that place where you can be like, I'm conjuring this, or I would choose to tap into this, or do you just have to allow for it to come to you, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't?
What a great question, and so pertinent to our discussion too about addiction, because we can invoke these types of things with plant medicine, for example. Ayahuasca. I've not taken ayahuasca, but that is, a well-known pathway for people to experience themselves, to open that connection, create those pathways with their higher self. It can be very, very powerful. There are darker aspects of the ayahuasca journey that people need to be aware of in terms of, having the right facilitator, being in the right environment. It's really, really critical. Ayahuasca has taken off so big
Yeah.
in Central and South America that there are a lot of people who are just in it for the money. I mean, that's just the truth. They're just in it because it's such a lucrative
A lot of
thing.
charlatanism happening.
Exactly. So you want to be very careful that you have the right facilitator who's in the right environment, because you are opening yourself up energetically, and you that does make you vulnerable energetically. And there are very real things that can happen,
Mhm.
unscrupulous things that can happen when you're in that state. So go into any ayahuasca experience with your eyes open, and do your research. Don't just decide on a whim to do it. It should be very sacred, and you should really have a lot of trust with the people that you're with, the people facilitating it. And then if you're with a group, you don't want to just like, oh, okay, well, I guess these are the right people to be in the group with. From an energetic perspective, it's a very sacred
Mhm.
experience. So be mindful about it, be deliberate about it, be patient,
Trust
don't just,
feeling, trust your gut intuition. About we've kind of segued into
yeah.
ayahuasca, but I did have a bad psychedelic experience, that I like preemptively paid for, showed up for, and didn't feel really amazing about that whole entryway process.
Hmm.
I smoked bufo a couple years ago, and like the environment that it was in was like not really clean. There was like this cat that was bothering me, and like I could see the habitual use of things in her apartment, for example, that I was like not in alignment with, not in a judging way, but like it didn't feel very good, but I
Hmm.
followed through. And then I had an entity attachment that resulted in me feeling really depressed with like a physical weight on my back. I would bawl my eyes out for like anything, like a dish would break and I'd be, and I would like panic cry. And I was fortunate enough to put it together that that is what had happened to me. And then I had to have it energetically removed, which was its own amazing experience, which was better than the bufo experience I might add.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, psychedelics are definitely a pathway, and please be careful and picky and selective, and like do your prayers and your research on with whom and what
Yes.
you're taking. But
Yeah.
is that how you initiated this process?
No, so I haven't taken ayahuasca. Mushrooms are another way to do it. I have had mushrooms, but the things that I write about in my book are not mushroom, because I talk about some of the experiences I've had. The experiences I've had are in that hypnagogic state between sleep and wakefulness. So I have, they're not mushroom trips. I've had some amazing experiences with mushrooms. So again, you want to be mindful. It's not just, don't just take them and then go to a party and whatever, like use them in a very sacred way. But something that has really helped me has been CBD. So Where I live in Indiana, we don't, you can't just go to a dispensary that we don't have like THC legally available. And I don't have any contacts that I know of that I haven't sought it out. What's that?
You don't have a weed guy.
Yes, exactly. But I can get CBD. And so I had a lot of times when I've had those experiences, I've had a fraction of like a CBD gummy. And that has helped me to expand that hypnagogic state so that I can be in the state where I am awake, but so I'm definitely not asleep yet, but I'm not really like I'm in a different state of consciousness, and I'm able to hold that time when you're transitioning into sleep, which is a really fertile time.
Mm.
Um, so I've been able to like hear guides. One of the interesting things that has happened a few times is like I'll just randomly hear a day and a date that is a few weeks out. So I would hear like Friday, May 25th, and I don't know off the top of my head if May 25th is going to be a Friday, but
Out
I
of
just
town?
yeah, so I write it down and look the next morning, and it's each time it's been accurate, and it's not, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is there going to be some huge like catastrophe or some big, something that happens? And there is never an external thing, but there is often like an inner where I feel an inner shift, an inner expansion, like almost like an inner consciousness graduation, like I've opened up to another level. Um, but a lot of times that's where I will see the geometries. I'll feel like these. I'll just feel a lot of energetic um, energies. Not usually, not so often like seeing people, beings. Sometimes that is the case. Um, and I don't really feel like landscapes or see landscapes, but it's more energy, like seeing energy represented in different ways, whether it's geometry, whether it is like seeing them. Sometimes it's like a mosaic. Sometimes it's like I'm like often there's like a dome, and it's like I feel like I'm in a mosque, even though I haven't been in a mosque in this physical life, but it's just that dome kind of sense. Sometimes it's more cathedral-like where there are pillars and it's more of a long column, or
Cool.
more of a long hallway.
That's
But what's really fascinating is I have recently been like, is the CBD a crutch now? Like, is it appropriate that I use this? Like, is it helping me, or is it like somehow getting in the way of
mm,
something? And so that's been a question where it's like, I love that it makes it so easy for me to stay in that in between state. But then I'm like, is there a part of it that is like it's blocking me from a deeper experience or something? So it's just been a question that I've had. And then I had this fascinating dream a few weeks ago where there was a lot of symbolism in this dream, but part of it was I was basically with this gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper, like a dimensional gatekeeper, who was I wanted to enter. It was actually represented in the dream. It was an immigration officer, and I was trying to get into Korea, of all places, which I don't have I don't have a connection with Korea, but you could think of that as like a new dimension, like a new realm that I don't know.
yeah.
And I couldn't find my passport. I found two expired passports, but I couldn't find my current passport, even though I was like, I know I had it because I got on the plane and I couldn't get on the plane without it. But this guy was really patient with me. He was like such a nice guy. But as I'm looking through my backpack for my identification, I found all these red gummy candies. And like I took two huge handfuls, and I was like, can I throw these away? Do you have like a bin? And to me, they just look like gummy candies, in the dream. But as there were so many elements of this that just seemed so poetic and profound that I was like, okay, I always write my dreams down, whatever I can remember. But I was like, it took me days to really kind of feel into all of these different elements and to try to see what the dream was telling me. And I was like, okay, these gummies, I think these are like the CBD, and I'm giving them to the gatekeeper. Like, can you throw these away?
Mm,
And I haven't had any since because I just felt that was my subconscious or my guides saying like, here's the answer. Like it's time. They served you, but now it's time to throw them away. And
Mm.
so I did that because I felt like, okay, now I have clarity. And it has been really interesting that now it's been 2 or 3 weeks with none, with, not, and I was having it maybe like 2 times a week, 2 nights a week, and it was like, sometimes it would just make me fall asleep. So it wasn't like every single time I did it. I would have a multidimensional experience or quantum journey, as I call them. And sometimes I wouldn't have taken anything and I would have the experience. So it wasn't like a guarantee, and it wasn't like I always needed it, quote unquote, needed it. But I feel it's been interesting, like just quote unquote getting clean, if you want to think of it that way.
Of C-
Um, what's that?
Clean of CBD.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I had like just being willing to say, okay, let's see what happens. It's been slower. It's been, I've needed to keep my patience. Um, but I am having those experiences without, even just last night. Like I was awake for a good at least an hour after I fell asleep, just seeing with my mind's eye these things that I used to only see when I was, well, not again, not always, but most of the time I needed the CBD. I'm able to open myself up, open my energy up in a very expanded way, without that aid. And
How do you do that? Do you just set an intention when you're like transitioning from waking to sleeping? Do you just set an intention that you would like, or pose a question that you would like to contact your guides or your subconscious and then just trust what comes? Like, how do you set that up if someone wanted
what
to?
a great question. So I always start by just invoking God's light, divine light, source light, whatever you're comfortable with. I know God is like a triggering word for some people. For me, there's an innocence. Like I used to relate when I was little, I had no problem, like, oh, God, God. And I would, no problem with it. And then it's just like as I've gotten older, it's like, oh, people have traumas with God. It's used as like a
A
manipulation,
white man's
control.
God or this God.
Yes, and it's like, you kind of learn the human, like, oh, God's actually wants to punish you and all of these things. And it's like, that's not what I felt as a child. So it's really for me going back to the innocence and like this being that is so loving and so on my side and wants me to be, whatever it is that I desire, wants that for me and wants that connection with me. Um, like very benevolent, very loving. And it's really more of an energy, a light.
Are you saying this telepathically? I've been liking saying
Yeah.
present consciousness.
Yeah, that works too.
I've also reclaimed the word God from my religious upbringing, but I resonate with
Yeah.
what you're saying. So you
Yeah.
like set out a telepathic intention, or are you saying this audibly?
Usually it's telepathic. If I'm like completely alone and comfortable, I might say it out loud because that helps keep my thoughts from drifting. So it is really helpful and it can be more powerful to really say it out loud. But yeah, invoke, and I will just say, like, I invoke God's light, I invoke Christ's light, whatever it resonates with you. I ask for that light to fill me and overflow and add and I ask for to be surrounded by my guides. I like to call them my divine team. You don't need to know who that is. There might be people who have this barrier of like, well, I don't know. Do I have angels? Do I have ancestors? Do I have star beings? Do I have ascended masters? Like who are my guides? I have no idea. It doesn't matter. You have them. You
Mhm.
have benevolent beings who are on the other side, who are imperceptible to your human eyes, and they are there to help you. And the more that you reach out to them, the more they can help you, because we do live in this free will zone where so they can't impose themselves on you. So if you're like, well, I don't have any proof that I've had any help, or I very rarely have proof, if you're not reaching out, they're going to be much quieter. But if you're saying, I ask you to walk through this meditation with me or this sleep time with me, or help me to expand in and into the fullness of who I am, or whatever you really desire. Help me to extend the time before I fall asleep so that I can perceive more. It may start with dreams. It may start by like it's harder to hold that. It's taken me years of deliberate practice of holding that space and being able to navigate it, be able to recognize it and feel into it. And it's like I've carved these pathways over time of like, okay, I know this space more and I can hold it more. And sometimes I literally just like last night, I held that space for a while and I could feel that there was new energy coming in and new kind of access points. Um, and then eventually I got tired and I was like, okay, I'm ready to sleep. Like I am ready to fall asleep and it's that choice. And sometimes I just slip into sleep, and it's not like I cut it off, but there are plenty of times where I'm like, okay, I'm tired and I need to have some sleep for the night. But it's this, so
Still a
it is, what's that?
Still a human. Must.
Yes, that's right. So it is this deliberate intention and this asking, and then, understanding that it is a journey. So it may be that things begin with dreams where it's like you wake up and you're like, wow, I had a strong dream. I'd encourage you to write it down. I always have a notebook by my bed and I have like a quote unquote dream journal. But it's just literally just a notebook and I write down what I can remember. But a lot of times that will be like a first step. And then you might start, or again, like, who am I to say? It may be that through that intention, through that desire, that you immediately start to have some experience in that in between state. But sometimes it's just recognizing like that's a really powerful time and we just don't realize how powerful that time is before we actually fall asleep. But we're like out of our regular kind of waking state. There's that fruitful, like, wow, like kind of just um, in between state.
Yeah, yeah. I love that state. I Talking to you is inspiring me to want to do more of this at night. I'm so effing tired when in my head
Hmm.
from my mom life. It's like, God,
Yeah. Yeah.
quite like that all the time. But so I've been doing it more in the morning, like when I
Hmm.
wake up, like not bolting out of bed. Don't pick up my phone for as long as possible. But before I even get out of bed, I kind of stay and like feel around for like whatever messaging or things, remnants from the dream state that like are really important, or like what should I notice. And it really is like 5 minutes maybe of linear
Yeah.
time, but it feels really like saucy kind of,
Yes.
like in this really interesting space that a lot of us just kind of bypass because like the mornings are fast and you got to get going and like get up. But even if you get
Yeah.
up at 5 in the morning, like, like eventually, like my body kind of wakes up like 10 minutes before my alarm. Now I've been doing that
Hmm.
kind of practice for a while. And it's like what you're saying, like your mind becomes trained then to attune to this kind of different frequency. Like your body knows what time it is. Your body will wake you up, but your mind can kind of travel or expand more outside of these like traditional routines of the body, so to speak, or like the dailiness. You can find these little moments, and the two most profound ones I think are, if you're not going to do a special kind of trip or journey experience, which we don't
Hmm.
often have time for, but I definitely recommend them, are the morning, like the waking to dreaming, and then the dreaming to waking
Yes.
bookends.
Yes. So, like the nighttime, like what I've been talking about, that hypnagogic state is that, going from waking consciousness into the sleep. But what you're talking about is an equally fruitful time, which is called the hypnopompic state. And it's
Ooh.
just the reverse. We're breaking through sleep into wakefulness, but there are all kinds of intuitive insights that we can get where our dream time is blurring with the physical environment. So, like birds chirping, for example, outside, like it's physically happening in our waking realm, but it's also kind of part of our inner realm and it's like blurring with memories of a dream, or it might be blurring with the dream itself. And we might be able to kind of like be lucid dreaming a little bit, where it's like we're kind of remembering or going back into a dream that we just had, but we also have part of our waking mind in it. So we're like a part of us, we're engaging in the dream in a different way. All of these are very fruitful. And the other thing about it is, if you wake up in the middle of the night, so there are a lot of people who just spontaneously wake up, and that can feel really frustrating, because we've been trained to think like we need all of these hours of solid sleep, and if we don't have that, we're going to, pay for it in the day. I think that a lot of that is false, and we just have fallen into it, like we believed it. I
Yeah.
believe that if we spontaneously wake up, whether, our body says we have to go to the bathroom, so we quickly go to the bathroom, we have a hard time falling asleep. I try to see those as gifts, because
Mm,
that does get us in. Like, we might not be in a deep sleep, and we may still be like aware of our surroundings, but that if we can relax, and if we can just be in that state of neutrality of like, okay, I don't have, if my body's not falling asleep, then it doesn't need to fall asleep. Like, let my body drive it. I
mm,
must not be super exhausted, and I'm going to trust that. I'm going to trust that my body would fall asleep if it really really needed to fall asleep. So maybe this is a time for me to connect to my spirit. Maybe this is a time for me to talk to my guides, talk to God, and ask for, let me feel your light. Do you have a message for me? And let ourselves be in that suspended, relaxed state where it's like, maybe inspiration will come. Maybe we'll feel like we hear messages or sense messages, or maybe it's just a time for us to actively strengthen that connection. To be like, I might not have an actual like result that I could pinpoint and say, well, I asked for this and then this happened. It may just be a time to practice and to say, I don't get a lot of time to like feel my connection to my soul or my guides or whatever it is, and now I'm being given this opportunity. So let me just ask, I want this to be a stronger connection. I want to feel your presence, like hear me. And maybe, maybe now or maybe today when I wake up, maybe as I go through my day, you can send me a sign and you can remind me of this, and you can, we can strengthen this, and you can help me to be able to see your hand in my day, or whatever it might be. But that can be a precious time that's just for you and your soul and your team. And it can be this like beautiful gift to strengthen that connection if we can just trust that our physical body is getting what it needs, and release ourselves of that pressure of like, I only have 3 more hours until my
yeah.
alarm goes off, and telling ourselves this story of what that's going to mean for the rest of the day. Get
Mm.
rid of that, and get some intentionality and change our perspective.
I really love that perspective and that reframe around what most of us think about being awakened. They're like, oh, I must have a weak bladder. Like, I am so busy in my mind. It's like, or
Yeah.
this is an invitation for you to
Yeah.
actually have some quiet time because you have a really busy life and you don't get, like, I always wake up at 3:30 almost every night.
Hmm.
And sometimes I feel like I have to pee or something, and sometimes I don't, or like my son kicks me in the head or something. But it's like, why is it always that time? And I'm gonna practice this. I really love this. This like feeds into what we were saying earlier. Because this, if you're dear listener, if this sounds fun and exciting to you, please take whatever you liked about this conversation and like practice a little piece of it. So whether that was, looking at the shadow self and integrating parts of yourself, or playing with dream work, or playing with these pause times, or you can explore Kara's website for ways to do meditation. Like, don't take on everything at once. I always encourage people to just do subtle shifts and like make a shift that sticks first, and then you expand from there, because then otherwise no habits stick. But what I'm kind of like, meandering around in my mind is like, well, when I imbibe, because I work with people for alcohol use disorder, but I don't have like, I'm not a totalitarian either. Like,
Hmm.
I'll drink a beer, I'll have a glass of wine, but I don't intoxicate myself like I used to. But what I do notice too, and like I'm kind of in this phase of like when I have a beer, or 3 beers and like 5 hours later go to bed or whatever on the weekend, like I don't feel that like I have to rework the connection that I'm working on. Like my daily
Yeah.
practice more instead of like looking forward to happy hours, like I look forward to meditating in the morning and that helps me not drink at night because I really like this place I've gotten to of like I can move energy through my body, which I couldn't do before. Like I can identify every chakra spot of the 7 main ones. Like I can let source into my third eye. Like I can do all these things that I couldn't do before because I had created such a low vibration with my energy from chronic alcohol use. So what I'm saying in a really long-winded way is that there's kind of like a trade off, and you mentioned that like patience is key. There isn't a quick fix. So like in my mentality for people who are listening to this episode because you struggle with some sort of addiction, got to kind of think of like the long term gains and the short term wins and like have the long term experience. If you do start to titrate spiritual practices into your life, it does feel really fun. Like it's not a shot of heroin, but like you can get to those places where it's like a whoosh comes, whether intentionally as you do or like with practice, or it kind of will just happen to you like a kundalini awakening or a spiritual awakening. But once it becomes more fun and interesting to explore consciousness and spirituality and energy, and your mind starts moving over there, these other things that are really like within the matrix holding and of a lower vibration and our vice use and substance use, they do just kind of start to like become less interesting. And you'll also notice, for myself, I notice, and people I work with for a longer time notice this, when you go in this other direction of consciousness expanding. I'm kind of just repeating what I said earlier, but then you smoke weed or like whatever it is that you're doing that like it just does not feel, it's not, sometimes it's in the manner that you use it, right? Like you can use tobacco ceremoniously or you can chain smoke 40 cigarettes hoping that there's like something to be gained in the bottom of the second carton, like the intention. It shifts your intention, it shifts how you use these things, and all of this starts to become like less interesting, less sacred, less special, and this becomes more interesting and more fun. And I think I'm trying to answer the question I started out with, but it's like what you're offering this conversation today is super valuable that people can take pieces of it, the expertise that you have after years of doing it, right? It's not a short term thing, it is a long term thing. But when you let it be fun and interesting, it's like you start to identify as being somebody who just does that more naturally instead of somebody who wakes up with a hangover and it's like, oh, fuck, I would meditate today, but I can't because I feel so nauseous and whatever. Like it starts to become this like, I really like how I felt when I went to bed sober and got up and meditate. And it starts to become this like different kind of, that's like what busts up this like it's not normalcy, but like the commonality of using, and in your case, like using CBD or whatever one might use, you begin to notice like, oh, I can just do these things naturally. Like I have the
Yes.
ability to connect with this source or feeling. Verbiage is not really that important of like that feels really good. Like, and it wants
Right.
me too, like you can feel
Yeah.
when you make that connection or you initiate that conversation, like it's right there. Like you don't really have to
Yeah.
go far.
I love everything that you said, and it rings so true. And it's this playfulness that
Yeah.
the universe has this intelligence. Like there is cosmic divine intelligence running through everything. And the
Mhm.
more we get into this alignment and we allow that divinity to run through us, and every single person is worthy of this by birthright. It is not something that you've gone too far in one direction and you can't open yourself up to this. Very likely it's already happening. The universe is already aligning in such a way that it's there, but you're not seeing it. And
Mhm.
so you just need to make some steps to come into alignment so that it's more visible and it comes into your awareness more. Um, But like
Mhm.
you say, it's so fun. I mean, one of the things, synchronicities of things just showing up, people just showing up at the right time in the most unusual ways, like different things getting reinforced, one person telling you something that blows your mind, and then you turn a podcast on and they're saying the same really specific thing. And then you click on some article and it's about one thing, but then it halfway through the article, they are reinforcing this like profound thing that you've just heard from the other two sources, that there, and it is fun. Like that is fun. And it's like, whoa, there is something happening here. And it
Yeah.
is happening. And so it's up to us to make the choice to tune into it. And it can take, that we have to change some of our behaviors, but the rewards are immense.
Mhm.
And just like you say, there is this trade-off. So I also feel that I know because I gave up alcohol many years ago, and the hardest part of that for me was the expectations of others. That was what kept me from doing it sooner than I would have otherwise. But it was me feeling that if I'm going to go out with my friends, or even if I'm going to have a night in with my husband, or I'm going to celebrate, I have to do it in a way that people expect me to do it. And I had to come to terms and really fully think about and accept this is my life. This is my life, and I get to live it exactly how I want to live it without, like, it doesn't matter what other people expect of me. If they're inviting me along because they want everybody to participate in the same way, then I don't belong there, and that's okay.
Mhm.
There are other things for me. If
Mhm.
people like me just because they like how I am when I'm when I've been drinking or whatever it might be, then that's that's not my problem. you know, what they want from me is not my problem if I'm not hurting somebody. It's like I want to improve myself. And the whole reason that I ever gave up alcohol was not because I was worried about addiction or because any sort of stigma or anything. It was exactly what you talked about in terms of being able to feel energy and to use energy and to wield energy. So I'm an energy healer. And when and in order to do that the most effectively, I need to be able to perceive my energy and I need to be able to direct my energy. And alcohol use, even if I hadn't drunk the day before, it sticks with you. It informs your energy pattern and it informs your perception. And so I wanted to be as clear of a vessel as I could in order to be able to experience perceiving energy and be able to utilize it. And I understood alcohol got in the way of that. So for me, it was like no judgment. And it wasn't even like, to get a handle on anything, but it was literally like, this is just getting in the way of how I want to experience and perceive life and energy. And so I just really, that's another piece to it that we may not even think about of like, what part of what I think other people expect from me, who they expect me to be, what am I scared about there of really coming into who I really am? And you're here to live your life. Like you cannot let other people's expectations of how they want you to live or what they want you to reinforce of their own.
Mhm.
If people are going to think that, oh, I'm worried people are going to think I'm better than them or whatever it is that we tell ourselves, let them think that. You don't control that.
They might not, they're probably not even thinking it.
They're
Like,
probably not.
more times out of not, it's like we're thinking that and we have projected that thought because it's a fear onto
Yeah.
other people so that they can live it out for us, and then it can be an excuse for us not to change or
Yes.
to live into our own kind of soul destiny, which is like
Right.
it's thrilling and scary and fun and tiring, and so it's like all it's like it creates more nuance in life, I think, than
Hmm.
staying into a pattern of self-harm that you perceive or believe to be helpful for you, and it is for a time, and it's like part of there's no wrong in doing these things, but at a certain point, you might feel like you're outgrowing them. And this may be why.
Exactly.
It maybe it's because like your soul is like, nah, I don't want that. And you're like, I need this bigger container. And this
Yeah.
is like a smush down or a squish down, and or like stirring the cup again, and maybe the soul's like, no, 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 I'm ready for the shit to settle.
Right. And then it's like if you that was my thing with the CBD where it was like, is there something more for me? Like, am I actually blocking something? I think this is a quicker route. I think it's helping me, but is it actually like energetically creating some sort of glass ceiling where it's like,
Mhm,
I think that I'm getting, more expansive because of what I'm perceiving, but actually I could go more without it, but I'm just
mhm,
not giving myself the chance because I keep thinking I'm expanding more. You know what I mean?
mhm. Well, it's like you moved through that phase. I consider these
Yeah.
phases or levels of understanding and moving. It's moving through. Okay, move through that phase of like, oh, a deeper level of understanding. I don't need to be attached or dependent on any sort of substance for
Right.
do this kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't want to go, but I kind of have to go.
I know.
I just want to stay here and trip out with Kara. Where can people find you? And do you have any sort of offers or memberships or things that people can jump into at this time? And get Kara's
Yes, thank
book.
you.
I'm reading it and it's really good.
Oh, thank you so much. The book is Your Authentic Awakening, a guide to everyday spiritual living. So if you're in the US, you can go to my website, which is karagoodwin.com/book. And that's where you can get a signed copy with free shipping. But if that's not accessible or you're not interested in that, it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, all the places that you would get your books. You can now get it on there. It's early release. It hasn't been out that long, but and then, yes, I do have a membership like that's really, it's $27, super low entry. And that is focused on meditation and spiritual development. It's an amazing group of people, such a supportive group, really beautiful souls. We meditate 1 to 2 times a week together on Zoom. And then we have like informal get togethers where we're just kind of talking about where we are with life, what our challenges are, how we can support each other. And we end with kind of an invocation prayer kind of to uplift all of us. Um, and we have book club and things like that too. I don't know when this is coming out. I have a workshop.
Summer.
Oh, this
June.
summer.
Yeah.
June. Okay. So I am doing a workshop at the end of May. You could purchase the replay. This is an energy reset. So if some of the things that we've talked about in terms of perceiving energy and how energy is a part of our physical life and how the things that we do affect our energy and vice versa. It's an energy reset. So you're going to get some intellectual understanding on how, like, on distorted energy. It's specifically around clearing and distortion, but we're also going to do some activations, some clearings, and give tools for like how to carry that forward. Um, and I've got my podcast, Soul Elevation, that has its own website, soulelevationpodcast.com. And I've got like 450 some odd episodes.
Ah, good job.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. So there's a lot of content out there for that to support your spiritual growth and all different kinds of aspects of life. So there's a lot out there.
Yeah. Kara has a wealth of resources and things you can check out, and her book. And thank you so much, Kara, for being here. And thank you, listener, for being here. Friend.
Yeah. Thank you, Jess. Thank
Beautiful
you for this.
person.
Yes. Thank you for this amazing time with you and for just holding space through your podcast for people to grow and to learn and to just evolve. It's really beautiful. Thank you for
I
letting me
would
be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Please share this podcast with a friend or anyone you think would enjoy it or get some benefit out of hearing um, what was shared here today, Kara's wisdom and my bad jokes. And please leave us a review with all the stars and the nice things to say because it helps other people find us and we greatly appreciate it. And we hope you have a beautiful day. We'll be back with you next week. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. It's the Sleep Number Everything Smart Bed sale. Every smart bed and base are on sale during our Memorial Day event. Up to 50% off, plus free home delivery. Limited time. Exclusively the Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.